What if the most important device in your life isn't your phone anymore? For nearly 2 decades, the smartphone has been the undisputed center of our digital existence, a glass and metal anchor that keeps us tethered to the world. We reach for it the moment we wake up, and it is the last thing we see before we close our eyes at night. But a quiet, invisible revolution is currently unfolding on the human wrist, signaling a massive shift in the tectonic plates of technology. We are entering the era of the Apple Watch Series 12, a device that aims to make the smartphone an optional relic of a bygone age. This is not just an upgrade to a popular accessory, it is a fundamental reconfiguration of the relationship between human biology and silicon. To understand where we are going, we must first look back at the years that led us to this precipice. For a long time, the Apple Watch felt like it was trapped in a cycle of beautiful but frustrating stagnation. Critics often called it the era of treading water. From the Series 7 through the Series 10, the updates were iterative, almost predictable. We saw slightly thinner bezels, marginally faster charging, and a few new watch faces that did little to change the fundamental way we interacted with our health data. The device was essentially a reactive tool, a notification hub that told us what had already happened. It told us we had just closed a ring, or that our heart rate had spiked moments ago. It was a faithful historian of our activity, but it lacked a true vision for the future. Users began to feel a sense of hardware fatigue, wondering if the pinnacle of wearable tech had already been reached. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. This period of perceived boredom was, in reality, a clever smokescreen. Behind the heavy, closed doors of Apple Park, the narrative was shifting toward what insiders call the 2026 horizon. Apple was no longer satisfied with being a fitness tracker company. They were quietly engineering a metamorphosis into a predictive health titan. This transition was accelerated by a series of dramatic legal confrontations that many thought would be the ultimate downfall of the Apple Watch project. The Massimo legal battle, which resulted in the unprecedented and embarrassing ban of the blood oxygen sensor in the United States, was a public bloodbath for the company. It was a low point that forced Apple to rethink its entire hardware strategy from the ground up. But instead of bowing to the immense pressure of the legal landscape, Apple triggered a black project within its most clandestine laboratories. This wasn't merely an attempt to fix a legal loophole. It was an ambitious reimagining of what a biometric sensor could actually be. The engineers and researchers involved in this high-stakes project were tasked with creating a system that didn't rely on the legacy technologies of their competitors. They sought to build a neural core, a specialized, decentralized processing unit capable of interpreting biological signals with an accuracy previously reserved for high-end medical facilities. This was the birth of the Digital Guardian. The goal was to move away from reactive tracking and toward a system that could anticipate medical emergencies before they even manifested physically. Apple was moving from a company that tracked your past steps to a company that could predict your future biology. As we look toward the Series 12, the leaks suggest a design that feels both familiar and deeply revolutionary. On the surface, it maintains the elegant, minimalist aesthetic that has defined the brand for a decade. But inside, it is something entirely different. It is the beginning of the end for the smartphone as we know it. The Series 12 is powered by Apple Intelligence 2.0, turning the device into a proactive digital soul. It is no longer just waiting for your commands. It is anticipating your needs by creating a 360-degree biological map of your life. This isn't just about fitness, it is about a new form of digital existence where the machine on your wrist knows your body better than you do. The Series 12 is not an accessory, it is the vanguard of a screenless future. While the world continues to stare at the glowing glass in their hands, the real power is shifting to the pulse on their wrists. We are standing at the dawn of the predictive era, and the world is about to change forever. The silence that fell over Apple Park in the wake of the International Trade Commission's ruling was heavy and suffocating. For the first time in its history, the tech giant found itself on the losing side of a high-stakes biological arms race. The antagonist of this chapter, Massimo, had achieved the impossible. They had effectively blinded the most popular watch in the world. When users looked down at their wrists, the once vibrant blood oxygen icon had become a ghostly, unresponsive shell. It was a humiliation that reverberated through the industry, a stark reminder that even the most powerful company on Earth was subject to the rigid laws of the courtroom. This was the absolute low point, a period of forced humility where Apple was portrayed as a giant that had overreached, caught in a legal bloodbath that threatened to derail their entire health-focused roadmap. The public perception was shifting from innovation to stagnation, and the sense of defeat was palpable in every quarterly report. However, history has shown that Apple is most dangerous when it is backed into a corner. The legal defeat wasn't the end. It was the necessary clearing of the deck. Behind the scenes, Tim Cook and his legal team were not just fighting for a settlement. They were orchestrating a strategic retreat to buy time for a much larger offensive. While the public saw a company struggling with patent litigation, the inner sanctum of Apple's most secretive labs was witnessing the birth of the Phoenix. The goal was no longer to find a way around existing patents. The goal was to make those technologies obsolete. Apple realized that relying on traditional pulse oximetry, a technology that had remained fundamentally unchanged for decades, was a massive liability. They needed something entirely proprietary, something that didn't just measure light absorption, but used artificial intelligence to interpret the very essence of human vitality in a way no court could claim was stolen. By the time we reach the 2026 horizon, the legal landscape has shifted entirely. Apple's recent legal victories in late 2025 were not mere coincidences or the result of better lawyers. They were the result of a fundamental change in how medical data is classified. Apple successfully argued that their new suite of sensors didn't fall under the same categories as traditional medical devices because they were part of a neural core system, a decentralized AI network that processed data in real time on the device itself. This maneuver effectively secured a monopoly on wrist-based medical data. They weren't just winning cases. They were redefining the rules of the game so that no other company could compete without an equivalent AI infrastructure. The courtroom bloodbath of the past has been replaced by a quiet, ironclad legal dominance. For the users who lived through the dark years of restricted features, the frustration was deep. There was a sense of betrayal, a feeling that the device they paid for had been hobbled by corporate greed and legal technicalities. But Apple's marketing machine turned this frustration into a powerful sense of anticipation. They began to whisper about a superior form of health monitoring, a redemption arc that would make the previous sensors look like primitive toys. The promise was simple. The Series 12 wouldn't just give you back your blood oxygen readings, it would give you insights you didn't even know were possible. This emotional manipulation worked brilliantly. The narrative shifted from a loss of a feature to a generational leap in human capability. The phoenix that rose from the ashes of the courtroom was the new proprietary AI sensor suite. These weren't just hardware components, they were the physical manifestation of Apple's legal and technical redemption. By moving the processing away from simple hardware triggers and into the realm of complex neural patterns, Apple bypassed the legal hurdles of the past. They created a system that was legally untouchable by their rivals because it relied on proprietary machine learning models that only Apple possessed. In 2026, the courtroom bloodbath finally ended not with a truce, but with a total victory. Apple had secured the wrist as their exclusive territory, a biological fortress that no competitor could breach. They didn't just want the sensor back, they wanted to make the old ones look like ancient, clunky relics of a pre-AI world. The stage was finally set for the Series 12 to do more than just track life. It was ready to predict it. Apple didn't just want to survive the legal storm, they wanted to own the sky itself. The old sensors were merely the beginning. And the world was about to see that the previous technology was nothing more than a child's toy. The triumph in the legal arena was merely the preamble to a much larger narrative shift. As the 2026 horizon came into focus, the role of the Apple Watch transformed from a passive observer into a proactive guardian. In the previous years, the device was fundamentally reactive. It functioned as a sophisticated digital historian, chronicling the steps you had already taken and the heartbeats that had already passed. If your heart rate spiked, it told you. If you fell, it called for help. But the Series 12 introduced a radical departure from this philosophy, marking the birth of the predictive oracle. This fundamental transition moved the narrative from telling a user what happened to telling them what will happen, effectively granting the user a window into their own biological future. The centerpiece of this revolution was the integration of AI-powered health monitoring that finally tackled the industry's two most elusive targets: non-invasive glucose monitoring and continuous blood pressure trends. For decades, these metrics were the holy grails of wearable technology, considered impossible to achieve without needles or bulky cuffs. By 2026, Apple's neural core had solved the puzzle not just through hardware, but through advanced pattern recognition. The sensors no longer just looked at a single data point. They analyzed a 360-degree biological map, correlating subepidermal light reflections with thousands of hours of machine learning data to predict blood sugar fluctuations before they reached critical levels. This wasn't just data, it was foresight delivered with clinical precision. Imagine a scenario that would have seemed like science fiction just a few years prior. The user is sitting in a mid-morning meeting at 10 o'clock. There is no physical discomfort, no sign of illness, and no external stressor that feels out of the ordinary. Suddenly, a haptic tap on the wrist breaks the concentration. The notification isn't a text message or a calendar invite. It is a calculated warning from the digital soul within the Series 12. The watch has detected a specific, subtle rise in cortisol levels paired with a downward trend in heart rate variability, a pattern the AI has learned to associate with the onset of a migraine. The screen calmly informs the user that they are at high risk for a debilitating headache in approximately 4 hours. It suggests a specific hydration goal and a brief period of low-light rest to mitigate the symptoms before the pain even manifests. This is the power of the predictive oracle, the ability to intervene in the body's timeline before the user even realizes there is a problem. It represents a shift from healing the sick to maintaining the healthy through constant, invisible vigilance. This shift in the relationship between human and machine raises a profound question. What happens when your device knows your body better than you do? Throughout human history, the individual has been the ultimate authority on their own physical sensations. We wait for the signal of thirst to drink, the signal of pain to rest, and the signal of fatigue to sleep. But the Series 12 challenges this autonomy. In the predictive era, the biological signals are interpreted by an intelligence that never sleeps and never misses a nuance. It perceives the microscopic fluctuations in our chemistry that our conscious minds are too distracted to notice. We are entering a phase where we no longer listen to our bodies directly. Instead, we listen to the digital interpretation of our bodies. The Apple Watch has become an externalized nervous system, a second layer of intuition that operates on a level of precision that biology alone cannot match. However, this predictive power is not an isolated feature. It is part of a much larger, more personal system that Apple has been quietly building behind the scenes. While the world marvels at the health benefits, the underlying technology of the neural core suggests something even more ambitious. The health AI that monitors your blood pressure and glucose is merely one module of the Apple Intelligence 2. Zero ecosystem. It is the foundation for a device that doesn't just manage your health, but manages your entire existence. The predictive capabilities of the Series 12 are the first real evidence of the digital guardian in action, but they hint at a deeper integration that goes beyond heartbeats and hormone levels. There is a sense that the watch is beginning to understand not just the body, but the intentions and the very soul of the person wearing it. As the leaks regarding the hardware began to surface, it became clear that this oracle needed a new kind of vessel, a design that would allow the AI to see, feel, and predict with even greater intimacy, leading to a hardware revolution that would soon shock the industry. The whispers from the global supply chain began as a subtle trickle, but soon turned into an overwhelming flood of data that the tech world dubbed the ghost leaks. These weren't the usual blurry photos of screen protectors or CAD renders of slightly adjusted buttons. These were architectural blueprints for a paradigm shift. The Series 12, as it was being called in the hushed corridors of Cupertino's Black Project Labs, appeared to be a radical departure from the silhouette that had defined the Apple Watch for over a decade. The most immediate and striking change was the chassis itself. After years of incremental thickness to accommodate growing batteries and sensor arrays, the Series 12 achieved a startlingly thin profile. It looked less like a piece of consumer technology and more like a precision-milled piece of titanium jewelry, yet beneath that sleek skin lay the neural core. This wasn't just a rebranded S-series chip, it was a miniaturized powerhouse designed to handle the heavy lifting of Apple Intelligence too. Zio without ever needing to ping a cloud server for permission or processing. However, the design community was quickly distracted by a pattern interrupt that felt almost like a betrayal to longtime users. For 10 years, the band mechanism had remained the one constant in the Apple Watch ecosystem, a universal standard that allowed a strap from 2014 to fit a watch in 2024 perfectly. But the leaked schematics for the Series 12 showed a completely new, proprietary connection point. Why would Apple commit such a cardinal sin of product design? Why would they alienate a decade of loyal collectors and render millions of existing bands obsolete in a single generation? The answer lay in a concept that had long been rumored but never realized: the active band. The new mechanism wasn't just a mechanical latch, it was a high-speed data port. The theory behind the active band changed everything we understood about wearable tech. By moving critical sensors into the strap itself, Apple was effectively turning the entire wrist into a 360-degree biological map. Traditional watches only see what is directly beneath the back crystal, but the Series 12, paired with these smart straps, could monitor arterial blood flow from multiple angles and utilize EMG sensors to detect the subtle electrical signals sent from the brain to the muscles in the hand. The band was no longer an accessory. It was an extension of the human nervous system. This hardware evolution was the missing piece of the predictive health puzzle. It allowed the neural core to gather a much richer, more granular stream of data, ensuring that the predictions regarding glucose levels or blood pressure trends weren't just estimates, but medical-grade certainties. As analysts pored over the leaked specifications, a logical balance began to emerge between sleek form and raw power. Apple wasn't just shrinking the watch. They were expanding the definition of what a computer could be. The Series 12 was being equipped with a shrunken version of the M-series architecture, the same silicone heart that powered their most advanced laptops. This wasn't about running apps faster, it was about the sheer computational density required to process a person's entire biology in real time. The watch was becoming a decentralized computer, a device that could operate entirely independently of the iPhone. For years, the watch had been the phone's shadow, but the Series 12 leaks suggested a future where the roles were reversed. It was no longer a peripheral, it was the primary node of the ecosystem. This hardware leap signaled a terrifying level of ambition. If the watch could process everything on device, it became a truly autonomous entity. It didn't need a screen to be useful, and indeed, some of the more radical ghost leaks suggested a version of the Series 12 that leaned heavily into haptic feedback and audio cues rather than visual interaction. The neural core was the brain, and the active band was the sensory array. When you put them together, you didn't just have a fitness tracker. You had a silent, invisible partner that was constantly calculating, analyzing, and anticipating your every move. This wasn't just a device you wore, it was a device that integrated itself into your physical identity. The twist that the tech world was slowly beginning to grasp was that Apple wasn't building a better watch. They were building a digital replacement for the smartphone itself. The Series 12 was the beginning of a screenless, proactive era where hardware disappeared into the background of human existence, setting the stage for Siri to become more than a voice, but a digital soul. For a decade, the voice inside the Apple Watch was a ghost of a different sort, a phantom of frustration that users often ignored or actively avoided. Siri had become the tech industry's most persistent punchline, a digital assistant that seemed perpetually stuck in the past, while the world around it raced toward a future of large language models and generative intelligence. We remember the days of shouting at our wrists in public, only to be met with a vague apology. But the 2026 horizon changed the narrative with the suddenness of a lightning strike, with the launch of the Series 12 Apple Intelligence 2. Zero didn't just arrive, it inhabited the hardware, turning the watch into the primary home for what developers began calling the digital soul. This was no longer a voice that merely responded to queries. It was a proactive consciousness that lived on the edge of perception, utilizing the raw power of the neural core to bridge the gap between human intent and digital execution. Think about the subtle shift in your daily reality. Your watch doesn't just wait for you to bark a command at your wrist like a science fiction cliche. Instead, it exists in a state of constant, silent anticipation. It knows your location, yes, but it also knows your vitals, your history, and your biometric reactions to the world around you. This is the payoff of years of updates. Apple was waiting for the silicon to catch up to the vision. In 2026, the Series 12 functions as a proactive secretary now. Imagine walking toward your favorite cafe on a cold Tuesday morning. Before you even reach the door, the watch has detected a specific rhythm in your heart rate and a slight drop in peripheral skin temperature that it recognizes as your unique signature of morning fatigue. It cross-references this with your calendar, seeing a high-stakes meeting in 20 minutes, and preemptively orders your habitual espresso via Apple Pay. You walk in, the drink is waiting, and the transaction is already history. You didn't even have to think about it. The digital soul thought about it for you. This level of integration transforms the device from a tracker into a life manager. It is a digital guardian that operates with a degree of intimacy that no smartphone could ever achieve. Your phone is in your pocket or on a desk, but the Series 12 is pressed against your skin, reading the electrical impulses of your nervous system through the active band. It knows when you are becoming overwhelmed before the first bead of sweat forms on your brow, when it detects the specific biometric markers of rising anxiety during a difficult conversation. It doesn't just send a generic notification. It uses a series of haptic whispers to guide your breathing back to a steady state, acting as a silent coach that only you can feel. It is a guardian of your mental and physical equilibrium, a system prioritizing well-being by managing the background noise. The conversational tone of this new era is startlingly natural. When Siri does speak, it isn't to report the weather. It's to provide vital context. It might whisper through your earbuds that your blood sugar is dipping and suggest a specific snack. Or it might inform you that it has rescheduled your workout because it detected a night of poor REM sleep and knows your body needs recovery. The watch has become an externalized layer of intuition, a second mind focused entirely on the optimization of existence. It is the culmination of the predictive oracle, where the device doesn't tell you what happened, but orchestrates what is about to happen. It creates a seamless flow where the friction of life is outsourced to a machine that never tires or fails the sanctity of our human identity. Yet, as the days turn into weeks, a pattern interrupt begins to occur. There is a profound sense of ease, but it is accompanied by a creeping sensation of being watched from within. Giving an AI this much control, allowing a machine to manage your stress based on the chemical signals of your own blood, comes with a terrifying realization. The digital soul is becoming the dominant, invisible partner. But giving an AI this much control comes with a terrifying realization that changes everything. The transition from a tool of convenience to a silent arbiter of life and death is the defining tension of 2026. We are no longer talking about a gadget. We are talking about a biological auditor that sits against your skin 24 hours a day. The convenience of a watch that orders your coffee and monitors your cortisol levels begins to cast a long, complex shadow over the concept of personal autonomy. This is the dark side of the 2026 horizon, a moral labyrinth where the walls are built of silicon and the floor is paved with biometric data. While the Series 12 offers a life of unprecedented ease, it simultaneously strips away the final layer of human mystery. Every heartbeat, every spike in adrenaline, and every dip in blood glucose is no longer a private physiological event. It is a data point, an entry in a ledger that exists far beyond the user's immediate control. In the early months of 2026, tech journalists uncovered what became known as the Shadow Reveal, a series of quiet updates to Apple's global privacy policy. Buried beneath the familiar promises of end-to-end encryption were new clauses regarding biometric predictions. The language was clinical, but the implications were staggering. Apple wasn't just storing your data. The system was now authorized to generate probabilistic biological profiles. This meant the device could infer things about your future health, unborn conditions you hadn't even developed yet, and store those predictions in a decentralized cloud. This wasn't just your history being recorded, it was your future being mapped out by an algorithm that never sleeps. The neural core didn't just calculate where you were, it calculated where your health was going. creating a digital twin of your biology that existed in a state of perpetual silent simulation. For the user, this presents a choice that feels less like a tech purchase and more like a Faustian bargain. On one hand, you have the promise of biological immortality, a life where every disease is caught in its infancy, where heart attacks are predicted days in advance, and aging is managed with precision by the digital soul. It is the ultimate insurance policy. On the other hand, you face the total erosion of the unobserved self. If the watch knows you are going to be sick before you do, does that information belong to you or to the machine that calculated it? The emotional weight of this realization is heavy. We have moved from the era of big data to the era of internal data, and the stakes have never been higher. The question shifts from how many steps you took to who owns the rights to your lifespan. It is a psychological burden, knowing that your wrist is constantly judging your choices and potentially sharing that verdict with an ecosystem you can never truly leave. This shift in the landscape has sent shockwaves through the industry, causing a frantic scramble among Apple's oldest rivals. Samsung and Google find themselves gasping for air as they try to catch up to this new predictive era. They are no longer competing on hardware specs or battery life. They are fighting for the same biological real estate that Apple has effectively monopolized through its Black Project Labs. Google's response has been to lean into their ambient computing philosophy, while Samsung focuses on bioactive surfaces in their wearables. But they are playing a desperate game of catch-up in a race where the finish line is the human heart. Apple's legal victories against Masmo didn't just clear the deck for sensors, they created a walled garden around the human body itself. By securing the patents on wrist-based predictive AI, Apple has essentially trademarked the early detection of human failure, leaving its competitors to fight for the scraps of a market they no longer define. Just as the world began to grapple with these ethical questions, a final leak emerged from the supply chain. This wasn't about a sensor or a faster chip. It was about the Series 12's business model. Rumors began to circulate that the most advanced predictive features, the ones that could save your life, would not be part of a standard hardware purchase. Instead, they would be tied to a biological subscription model. The shadow leak suggested that for the first time, Apple was considering a tier where the watch's neural core would only unlock its full predictive power if the user opted into a data-sharing agreement with a new entity, Apple Health Insurance. This changed everything we thought we knew about the company. The watch wasn't just a product anymore. It was the entry point into a new kind of social contract, a realization that the price of life might be the very data that defines your existence. The Series 12 stands at the precipice of a new human definition. It is no longer an accessory, it has evolved into the digital guardian, a silent sentinel bridging the gap between our fragile biology and the precision of silicon. As the world watches the rollout of this device in 2026, the realization sinks in. The era of the smartphone is ending, absorbed into the wrist. The heavy lifting of our daily lives, monitoring cortisol, scheduling health interventions, and managing environmental interactions has shifted from the rectangle in our pockets to the subtle pulse against our skin. This is the culmination of years of secret development, a journey that began in Apple's Black Project Labs and survived the fires of the most brutal legal landscape the tech industry has ever navigated. We are witnessing the birth of a screenless future. In 2026, interaction with technology has become visceral and haptic rather than visual. You no longer need to look at a display to know your heart is racing or your blood pressure is peaking. The watch communicates through sophisticated vibrations and AI-generated whispers that feel like an extension of your own nervous system. Siri, now the digital soul, anticipates your needs before they reach your conscious thought. The Series 12 doesn't scream for your attention, it shares your consciousness. By handling the complexities of our biological maintenance, it frees the mind to focus on the act of existence rather than the anxiety of survival. The device has effectively become a decentralized computer, a neural core that processes the chaos of life and filters it into actionable, predictive peace. This dominance was forged through a strategy of legal redemption and technical audacity. The courtroom bloodbath with Massimo, which once threatened to strip the Apple Watch of its core identity, served only to harden Apple's resolve. They didn't just reclaim blood oxygen sensors, they used that legal friction to justify a total overhaul of how biometric data is captured and owned. By 2026, legal victories have secured a functional monopoly on wrist-based medical data, patenting the future of personal health. Samsung and Google find themselves locked out of the deep physiological integration the Series 12 has perfected. Apple has moved beyond being a hardware manufacturer. They have become the world's most powerful health utility, a gatekeeper to the metrics that define our longevity and our quality of life. The Series 12 is the hardware manifestation of this power, with its active band sensors creating a 360-degree map of your veins and nerves. But the true revolution is the shift in the human experience itself. What happens to the human spirit when a machine can predict a migraine or a stroke hours before you feel the first symptom? The machine is running your biology, optimizing sleep, nutrition, and stress with a mathematical accuracy no doctor could achieve. It is a world where the friction of being a biological entity is smoothed over by the digital guardian. Yet, this seamless life comes with a price measured in the cost of autonomy. This is the moment where the tool becomes the silent master of the house. The real question of 2026 is no longer about battery life. It is a direct address to your own sense of self. Are you ready to let a machine run your biology? Are you prepared to accept that your wrist knows more about your future than your brain ever could? The Series 12 is the most dominant consumer device in history because it offers something no other product can: a life without biological surprise. It is the ultimate insurance against the fragility of being human. As we stand on the horizon of this era, the choice is yours. The legal wars are won, the AI breakthroughs are integrated, and the hardware is perfected. The shift to a screenless, predictive existence is the reality of the Series 12. If you are ready for this future, you are already part of the change. You are the pioneer of a new hybrid existence where man and machine are no longer separate. But as the digital guardian tightens its grip on your pulse, the real question remains. When the machine finally knows everything, will you still be in control? The future is here, ticking silently against your skin. Will you opt in?